Welcome to the Burnt Pancakes podcast. I am your host, Katie, and I am here to remind moms that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping. Today, I'm having a momversation with Mary Hendricks. You may know her from The Very Mary Life on social media or her podcast, The Very Mary Life podcast. She is known as That Relatable AF Mom. On a daily basis, she makes me laugh and helps me realize that I am definitely not alone on this motherhood journey. So come join me in a momversation with her as we talk all about the current stage of motherhood we are in, how to know if you're done having kids, and why motherhood often feels lonely. Welcome to the podcast, Mary.
Hi, Katie.
I'm so glad to have you on. I feel like we could chat all day about motherhood, so this is going to be fun. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us how old your kids are.
All right. Hi, guys. I am Mary Hendricks. I'm from The Very Mary Life. I have my husband, Kevin, and we've been married for almost 8 years. We have our dog, Lucy. We have our cat. And we got our 3 kids. We live in New Jersey. My kids are Cassidy, Spencer, and Haley. I have to actually think about their names because that's my life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Everything. But Cassidy is 5.5 almost. Spencer's 3.5. And then my youngest just turned 1 almost a month ago.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So she just turned 1.
We're busy.
So you are getting the question all the time. Are you done having kids? Do you get that a lot now that she's 1? Or when are you going to have another one? How do you respond?
It's not so much that when are you having another one? It's the are you done thing, because I think once you hit 2, or I feel like it's when you hit 2 and when you hit 3, the questions kind of start turning. When you have that 1, then everyone's like, when's the next one? When's the next one? And then when I hit 2 kids, I remember being really taken back by that because, when we were married, right? Not even when we were engaged, everyone's asking when you're getting married. When you get married, everyone's asking when the baby's coming. When the baby finally comes, immediately they're asking when the next one's coming. Mm-hmm. And then when we had 2, I remember being at a wedding when I think it was heavily pregnant with our second, and someone had come up and asked, "So are you done now?" And I was like,
let me birth this one first.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God. And then with 3, people more or less are like, oh my God, you're nuts.
Yeah.
How do you have this
your
many?
hands full? I get that a lot. You have your hands full. You're like, yeah, thanks a lot. Does it look like it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, but
I get asked the question a lot because I have 3 boys. Oh, are you going to try with that girl?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
One that hits a nerve because yes, I did want a girl at one. I'm so happy I have my 3 boys. I love it. But it was kind of I did want a girl. And I also don't want my boys hearing people ask, because they kind of what's wrong with boys? Why would mom want a girl? We're plenty. So it's awkward when they ask that.
Yeah. Well, that, and you just never know. We never had any trouble getting pregnant or anything, but it's just yes. It's the way that the question comes that it's either well, are you saying that because you're trying to gauge how crazy I am because you think that my life is a little nuts, or I don't know where the question's coming from. Mm-hmm. And I get it a little bit. I haven't gotten it too much because I don't even know. I think when they ask my husband immediately just gives them a look.
We're done.
We're done. We're done. And then when they ask
me, have that talk yet? Are we done?
No, I told when we were pregnant this 3rd time, because I just am so, I don't know if we're done having kids. And I told Kev, I was like, if we are, I don't really want to have a conversation because I don't know. There's something very final about it that kind of freaks me out a little bit. And I almost need it to be final through life as opposed to by choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I need it to get to a point where either age or just life is too busy and life passes us by, and all of a sudden we open our eyes and we're like, we're in our 40s and it's not feasible at this point. But just knowing that I have a choice in it is a blessing, but it's just it's a very hard one to be no.
Okay. So have you stored all the clothes, all the baby stuff, or have you? Okay. So I did that with my second. So my husband and I always said, we're going to have 2 kids. We're going to have 2. It's going to be great. I had my second and I was like, uh-oh, like, I'm not ready to get rid of these clothes yet. Like just this feeling inside me was like, I don't think I'm done yet, which I had always said, we're having two. Like, that sounds great. So every time he'd
Yeah.
be like, hey, should I donate this little pack and play or whatever? And I was like, oh, just maybe put it in the garage for a little bit. And he kind of like knew. He's like, what? So we had
Yeah,
to
that's what
talk,
we did.
like, are we going to have a third? And when it came down to it, it was like, what do we want Christmas to look like in 20 years? Like, did
Yeah.
it feel complete with those two? And
Yeah.
I didn't feel complete yet. And I
Yeah, it's
also thought
hard.
I'm getting older. So if it happens in the next year, then it's meant to be. And it did. So we have our third. But
Yeah.
after having my third, I was like, I am so done. Like, that pregnancy, I think, was like my body's way of saying, you're going to be fine after three. Like, I don't want to do that again. I feel very like complete with three. I like having that feeling. Had I not had that after my second, I would have felt like I was in limbo. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know?
Yeah. And that's what it kind of feel like. I have days where like I have a bottle warmer that I just found in our
Mhm.
cabinets. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this right now. And I was like, everything's downstairs. Every piece of baby clothing for the most part is in
Mhm.
Haley's closet waiting to be stored away or anything like that. And there's a side of me that's like, I cannot wait to kind of get rid of some of that stuff because
Yeah.
it's just like, it's just so much
Taking up so
stuff.
much room. Yes.
But on the flip side, I don't know. And if like really getting honest, I actually had a pregnancy scare earlier this week. And I called my friend
Go.
because
Yeah, go.
period was 3 days late. And my period is never late, ever. So
Oh my gosh.
all of a sudden I'm like, so I actually door dashed a pregnancy test to my house.
I
And I
didn't
had
know
like,
you. Gosh, that's awesome.
oh yeah, you can get like, and I actually did it twice because I got these blue dye tests from CVS or whatever.
Mhm.
And the faint line shut up. And I was like, what the hell? And I was like, oh my God, I was shaking. I have a video of it because I was like, I'm recording this if this ends up being true, because if it is, like, my husband and I take precautions to make sure that this doesn't happen. So if it
Uh-huh.
is, it's going to be like the episode of Friends when Ross and Rachel get pregnant, where he's like,
The miracle. Yeah.
freaking, yeah, it just makes no sense. So
Yes.
I'm like, oh my God, what is there? A faint line. Oh my God. And sure enough, it ended up being just an evap line and just a faulty test.
Oh.
Because I took like 15 more tests. I spent like $100 of pregnancy tests in
Oh,
that
I for
morning
sure have
of,
done that before. Like,
yeah, of like getting
what
all
was
these.
your
And
reaction though? Were you feeling like disappointed? Were you feeling relieved or just, I don't know how to feel. I don't know about this.
no, it was very limbo. And that was like my
Mhm.
test of being like, what I want. Like I was almost like I was a ball of nerves. Part of me in my head was like, this is not what I want right now. Where I was like, I'm just getting myself back. Like I just
Mhm.
am hitting that year postpartum of like I feel like I can breathe
Yes.
again and
Your baby's not
I'm getting my life
attached to
back.
you every second.
I
Yeah.
just finished breastfeeding. I literally just finished breastfeeding a week and a half ago. So like I
Oh my
just
gosh. Yeah.
had that and I was like, I just got myself back. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't very happy about it. But had it been the case, I would have, probably would have been
Right.
a few days of me being like, oh my God. And then I would have rallied and
Right.
been
Right.
happy with it because it would have obviously
Of
been meant
course,
to
mixed
be.
emotions. Yeah.
Yeah. But when it turned out being negative, then I was like, I can breathe. And I said to my husband, I told him afterwards because I didn't tell him what was going on in the moment until after. And I was like, you know what? I I'm open to having another baby for years if that's a decision that you and I make.
Mhm.
But I need it to be on my terms
Yeah.
because I need to know that this is going to be a welcomed thing when I can handle it, when I'm mentally in there, when I'm like actually
Mhm.
wanting it. Because
Yeah.
if I'm not, then it's not going to be like I want it. I mean, you want it essentially. You want to
Yes.
enjoy the experience. If I'm going to
Yeah.
have a fourth and bring more chaos into my life, I need to
Right. And
like
that third one kinda like
need it.
rocks things. Like, third is, I love having three, but the third one is like, ooh, this is a lot to juggle. Like, there's more.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the two rocked my world. I felt like 1 to 2 really rocked my world. The third has it's been a welcomed addition because I feel like I really have kind of settled into the chaos and
Mhm.
have gotten used to it and I have a routine and We look like a cluster F. Like we leave the
I don't
house
think
and
I'll
we
ever
look.
not look like a hot mess. Like,
Yeah, no. So I
just
think
the way.
I've gotten okay about that because for a while that used to really bother me. Especially leaving the house and when shit doesn't look put together, that used to really bother me. But I've gotten okay with accepting it and kind of knowing that like no one has ever said that this needs to look a certain way or be done a certain way. I just know that
Mhm.
my kids are happy and we're happy and that's okay. But the third comes in different times of like, I mean, me melting down and telling you before we started recording that my computer is on the fritz right now. Like I looked at my husband who just took it out of my hand saying like, I got to bring it to the store, but when the heck am I ever supposed to do that?
Right.
Like, how am I supposed to get
How
out
do
of the
I
house
have
with three
time for
kids?
anything or just like a dentist appointment for myself? And like,
Yeah, I haven't been to a
people talk
dentist in over
about
a year.
pelvic floor chiropractor. And I'm like, yeah, that would be something I should be doing. When do I go to that? When do I have time? Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
But I
I was
do
sick earlier this week.
Yeah, I do feel like I'm kind of getting to that stage now. My youngest is 3. So I'm finally starting to see like the light. I'm like things are open. I'm entering this new stage where I have a little bit older kids and it's feeling like I'm leaving the baby stage behind, which feels weird, but it also feels so freeing. I don't know if, like having a 1-year-old. Do you feel like you're close to that point or you're still
Yeah,
in
well,
it?
and that's the thing. It's like I still feel like I'm in it a little bit. I think once she starts getting a little bit more independent with walking and stuff, she's a stage 5 clinger. Like she needs to
Mm,
be. I need to be in her line of view at all times. Um, Nap times are good. Nighttime, knock on wood. Now that I say it, she's been sleeping through the night, so like I feel refreshed in those
mhm.
ways. And now that she's not breastfeeding, that's a huge win. I can actually get out of the house and book something. That's why I was going to reschedule with you. I was all thrown off. I finally booked my Botox. So excited.
Things
Like
are
things
looking
like
up.
that. Yeah, things are looking up. So I feel like I'm getting out of it. And then there's certain moments like with my 5.5-year-old and when she does things and um like there's still first to look forward
Mhm.
to. And that's what I'm starting to realize is like I think we focus so much on that newborn infant stage with the
Yes.
firsts that come with the little kid years that we forget that there's always going to be first moments that we're going to experience with them. They're just going to
I
be
love that.
different, but they're just as exciting. Like
Yeah.
I love seeing my daughter color a picture and like really see her imagination come out is a
Mhm.
really fun thing for me. And she's going to preschool now and the teacher calls me and like she's going to kindergarten and I'm signing her up for that soon. Like it's just all
Yes.
these different things that I'm like realizing it's really fun to see them starting to settle into who they are and watch that grow.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
just
god,
think
and
it
it
gets
only gets better because when I thought
yeah,
about being a mom, I picture myself as, like, a mom with babies. Like, you don't
yeah.
picture them really as kids growing
No,
up.
and
But
I
now
talked
I'm
about
like,
this.
I think I love the kid stage. So I loved baby stage, but seeing them play sports and, like, coming home with pictures from school, I love the kid stage. I love it.
Well, and that's like the part that I don't think many people cover. And I actually talked about this recently on TikTok. I don't know if you saw that video, but I had asked, I said, when are we done having kids? And the video gained traction because the responses coming through were like, I feel so similar to what I had said. It's a fear almost of settling into your storyline. Like, and
Mhm.
that's the part that we don't it's a very weird moment in life because as kids, if you think about it, we literally build our life up until a peak moment of, going to school, to build a career, to
Mhm.
hopefully, build a future. That future comes. A lot of us, I know for me, I always aspired to be a mom. I always wanted to
Yeah,
be a
me
mom. I always
too.
wanted
Me
kids.
too.
I always looked forward to seeing who my kids would be.
What they're gonna
I'm
look
very
like.
lucky.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that that came to fruition for me. And now I'm facing that moment of my life where I've looked forward to this and now it's done. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wait, what? Like, how did that
Oh my god,
just
that
happen?
that hit hard right before I turned 40. So I turned
Yeah.
40 when my youngest had just turned 1, and it was like I feel like I went through like a little mini life crisis because 'cause I'm like, my whole life has been about being a mom and, like, meeting the guy, then having kids, and then all of a sudden you realize, like, I knew I was done having kids, but you feel like I'm leaving this decade behind where I was making my family, and you don't
Yeah.
know, like, well, now what's next? Like, all that exciting baby part and like, "Oh, we're pregnant. What are we having?"
Yeah.
It was weird to feel like I'm not doing that anymore. So now what? I will say on the other side of 40, I'm like, I am loving them. I love the 40s. I love where my family is going because now we're not building our family, we're growing our family. We're watching our kids like
Yeah.
take wings, and it's so fun. But it was a very weird time in my life where I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm
Yeah,
done.
you almost get afraid of, like, I know for myself, like, I am the type of person that I've always looked forward to the next thing. Like, I've
Mhm.
always just been someone that looks forward to
Yep.
the next big thing. Like I said to my husband, if we're not having any more babies, I'm gonna have to get a puppy or something. Like, I'm just one of those that needs something new. And I've been that way forever. And I'm almost afraid of stagnation. Like, I'm afraid of sitting still for a little
Mhm.
bit. And I don't think we do. I just think we don't talk about it enough, that we think that that's what's going to happen to us. And I think that's why it's so important also to, like, you know, really invest in your relationship also, because I think that is intimidating. And I think that's why a lot of women struggle with it, because when we're not focusing on the kids, then we have to focus on us, and we have to focus on our relationships again. And if we haven't been doing that, that
Yeah.
feels so foreign
Yeah.
to us, where it's like, okay, how are we supposed to return to ourselves if I don't even know who the hell I am? And how are we supposed to return to our spouses when I haven't connected with them in a long time and I don't even know if I like them?
I know.
Like we get
Well, because
stuck in
having
this,
kids,
this.
like, totally shook our relationship because we dated for a very long time before we were married and then before we had kids. So then you have kids and you're like, whoa, it's not just the two of us anymore. And I have to give 100% of myself to this baby and these kids. You do
Yeah.
kind of forget, like, I still need to nourish this relationship. Like,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important, because it's like you're going, you get reminded of that. Like, at the end of the day, your kids, the hope of being a parent is that your kids leave. Like, that is the ultimate hope, is that you do it well enough that your kids are able to leave
Yeah.
and do it on their own. And that's like
Yes.
it's a very heartbreaking thing, but
Totally.
that's the overwhelming hope of it. And at the end of the day, it's going to just be you, and it's
Mhm.
going to just be your partner, if they're
Yeah.
around. So it's one of those things that you really have to, like, take a second and, like, you know, the importance of, trying to reconnect, especially with yourself. Like, that's the biggest thing. Is I always say that to people. And I had a guest on my podcast. Um, she was in her late 40s, and she's a mom of teenagers now. And she had said, the biggest thing that I encourage women to do is finding joy outside of themselves, and asking, like, when was the last time that you actually felt joy in your life? And she says that when you ask that of someone, especially a mom, uh, it's very hard to answer, especially if you put the conditions that you cannot answer using another person
Oh
as
my
that joy,
gosh.
as
Or
that
not
main source of
kid
joy, because
related.
it's true.
Yeah.
hmm Because
Oh
it's true.
gosh.
I mean, like,
And yeah, I would say, like, it wasn't until my third turn 3 that I finally said, like, I can start doing things for myself. Like,
yeah,
my husband is totally capable of watching my kids, but I had the hardest time saying, "Hey, I'm gonna go out with my girlfriends for a few hours." Cause I'm like, oh, I don't want him to do bedtime by himself. I want to be there. So it was
yeah,
literally around 3, or just like, I'm just gonna take 10 minutes to read a book. I never did
yeah,
that because I just felt like I have to be, always being the mom. And
yeah,
wow, yeah. When
yeah.
was the last time you took care of yourself?
Yeah. Well, and take care of yourself in, like, a different way, just like finding something that's for you, that's not having to do anything with your kids or your spouse or your family or anyone else. It's just
Yeah.
something for yourself. I think we just don't do that enough. And it's hard. I mean, especially when you're in the little kid years, it's just,
Yeah.
you're
I
exhausted.
think that is part of the reason I started this podcast because I just love chatting with moms. I love, being with my mom friends, but it started to get really lonely. Did you ever
Yeah.
feel lonely? Like from the day I became a mom, I feel like I realized I was an extrovert and I needed to see people, but it
Mhm.
got really hard. Like at first you have a baby and it's super hard to leave the house. And then like now mine are in school and all my friends' kids are in school. And you would think we'd have all the time in the world to hang out, but it's like, you're busy doing this, you're helping in the classroom. And I got lonely. I was like, I miss that connection with my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I recently talked about that because my husband and I were having that conversation, because I get bummed sometimes, especially, like, this past year of being postpartum, and I dealt with a baby that refused a bottle. And that was a whole different,
Oh,
like, a added layer of stress and isolation. And it just, again, my kids are 5.5 and under, and those years are so hard with balancing things between nap times and
Mhm.
we're starting to get a little bit into activities and school, like things like that, where it's just like I've met a few women, in my town and things like that. I haven't seen them in months, and we'll occasionally run into each other, but it's just like, how is this going to
Yeah.
work? Because we're all pretty much in the same time zone. And the added portion too is like, I'm one of the first amongst my friends to have a baby. And I'm the first amongst my friends to have this many kids. And that's a different dynamic that I think
Yeah.
not a lot of people consider. It's one thing to have one baby because that's automatically going to throw your life off. But the moment you have 3 kids, it's hard to, like, I have another mom that I met that only has one 4-year-old son. And granted, her life is just as busy, but I have 3. So
Yeah.
it's like just an
Do you want to
added
have a play date
layer
with my
of,
3 crazy kids or yeah.
yeah, well, and that's another thing. And like,
Mhm.
there's just so many different things or like you don't get invited to many things. I found that out. Like, not many people want you to come because they know that your 3 crazy little kids are going to come, and
Yeah.
that's totally fine. I get it,
Or
but
like the birthday party invite comes and I'm like, "Wait, is this for my 9-year-old or is it for all of us? Like, who's invited?" Or if it's a swim party, I'm like, "I've got 2 that cannot swim. Like, I can't take you to a swim party and manage all these kids." Like, it definitely
no,
has
and
felt
then
lonely.
finding childcare and things like that.
Mhm.
It's just, it's hard. And I know you're a stay-at-home mom and I'm a stay-at-home mom, and that's an added layer of like default. Like, our husbands are capable, but we're with our kids 24/7, and our husbands are with our kids. What is it? Like, they're probably, I mean, my husband gets home at 6 o'clock at night. He sees
Like
them for
bedtime.
2 hours before they
Bedtime.
go to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Like,
why, like, on weekends, I'm like, "Let's go somewhere. Let's get out of the house." Because 'Cause I'm like, "I've been home so much." But they're like,
yeah.
"Hey, let's just hunker down at home." And I'm like, "The kids,
Yeah.
they can't handle being home anymore. Either can."
Yeah.
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 It's
Yeah.
different.
There's definitely a lot of dynamics, but yeah, I mean, I've kind of just come to the conclusion. I said this in like a Instagram video and a TikTok, and I said, like, these are the family building years, and I have to remind myself of that. Is like, these are the ones that we are doing to, like, get myself to a place that when they are a little bit older, that's when that freedom's going to come. And that's the thing that you're
Yeah.
saying, that you're getting that taste of that freedom, is like, it will come, and
Mhm.
it will be there. And eventually my kids are going to be in school. And like, I had actually one of Cassidy's classmates' moms message me on Instagram. I guess she follows me, which of course I'm like,
I
oh
know.
God, how much have
I'm
you
always like, "Oh
seen?
god, people I know actually see me on there."
Yeah. I'm like, oh Lord. But she messaged me, and I was like, oh, well, I messaged her back, and I was like, I hope I'm not being forward, but I was like, I would love to hang out. I was like, cause at least our kids know each other, and like,
Yeah.
you're in town, I know someone. But that's when I think like that stuff is going to start coming out. It's just like getting in activities, our kids meeting kids and
Mhm. And I
things
think
like that. But
COVID kind of like made me realize a little bit because we were home with our kids 24/7. And I started realizing, like, in the long run, in years from now, like, our family unit is going to be the most important.
oh
So
yeah.
having that time to spend as family and having my boys, like, they fight all the time, but I'm like, my dream is for them to grow up to be best friends. And so if we're
Yeah.
like setting the tone right now that family is the most important, yes, we want friends and stuff, but we're yeah, I'm so happy that we had that time to bond.
Yeah. Well, and it's like a quality. I think the biggest thing is like the quality versus quantity type of thing.
Mhm.
I think that's like the biggest. I have my 2 good girlfriends. They both don't have children. So that's another thing, but they are my good girlfriends that I can go to them with anything, even if it's motherhood related. They don't understand it necessarily, but they will listen. And they're the type of girlfriends that we don't see each other for months on end. We don't talk every single day, but when we do, it's like nothing
Yeah, we've always
happened. And that's the best. And that's the best thing I could ever hope for. It's just that quality. And it's 2 girlfriends. It's 2
yes.
girlfriends. And I think my younger self would have probably been appalled at that, because when you're young, you think that you need a multitude of people.
Mhm.
Um, when you really don't. I think,
And to see each
you
other
just,
every single day, but it's like, no, that's not the stage we're at right now. Right now,
yeah,
we take
yeah,
the little bits of friend time. Like, I cherish
yeah,
that now when I can see, like, I have a Saturday night, I'm gonna see my friends. I'm like, that just fills me up. I love that.
yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, so you are That Relatable AF Mom on social media. How did that come about? Like, did you always know you wanted to just like put out there what motherhood's like, or did that develop over time?
No, no, it developed over time. I started not my podcast, my Instagram page back in 2016, and it was different. I was a personal trainer at the time. I had a focus in pre and postnatal fitness. So I had started it actually, and it was called Making Mama Strong. So
Oh,
my whole
wow. I
page
didn't know
existed.
that.
I just changed the title. Yeah. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of my page, you will see like
Wow.
the old videos, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I did that. And I kept the page alive. I just kept it, and I was
Mhm.
just posting random stuff, and I didn't like it. Had pregnant, or was pregnant with Cassidy, had Cassidy, kind of did the whole thing. And then we moved. I got pregnant with Spencer, uh, a year later, 13 months postpartum when I got pregnant with Spencer. And then I kind of switched my focus because I wasn't personal training anymore. I was a mom. Like I was a mom, and I
Mhm.
felt like my identity really switched into that. And so I started to kind of move it a little bit more to, at the time, that was 2019. That was when like Instagram aesthetics were
Yeah.
just a huge
Yeah.
thing. This perfection, this romanticizing of motherhood was a
Mhm.
huge thing. This blog format was a huge thing. So I got on, tried doing that, and I realized like that just, it was impossible to keep up with because I'm
Or it's
not an expert.
exhausting. It's exhausting.
It's exhausting to keep on a front that isn't true, and I'm sure there are some people who truly are these beautiful human beings who live beautifully well lit lives of like
A ring light always
perfect.
follows them.
Yeah, I'm sure they exist somewhere. I'm not one of those. I mean, my bed currently, if you see behind me, it just has laundry, and I have like my vanity right now is just a chaotic mess, and I've just always been that way. And once the pandemic hit, which I think a lot of people got, pushed into online and sharing their lives online, I got on and I just started sharing, and it really took a little bit of time before I really started to like take down the filters on my stories. I like removed all of the filters, and I remember doing my first reel where I said the word like, sorry if anyone's listening, earmuffs, like motherfucker. And I remember posting up on my stories asking my audience, being like, do you think I'm going to get in trouble if I post this? I really want to post this because it's just me. Like I cuss like a sailor a lot of times, and um, a lot of people tell me not to do it because Instagram at the time was like, "Oh no, don't touch that one." And I ended up doing it, and it actually catapulted. And things started to
Wow.
catapult me forward when I really realized that, like, it wasn't necessarily the cussing or anything. It was just me being like, this is who I am. Like, I just
Mhm.
am a little bit rough. I'm a little bit ridiculous. I'm a little bit like over the top sometimes, and just a little raw.
Do you
And
get
I
comments all the time though? Like, thank you so much for being real. Thank you for being relatable. Thank you for showing
Yeah,
us
and the
what
relatable,
motherhood
like
really is.
relatable became like it's become a big coined word now. Like if you go to everyone and their mother's profile, it's relatable. I'm relatable.
Mhm.
I'm producing relatable mom content, whatever that means. I will say, like, to give myself a little pat on the back, I was probably the first to have the relatable
Okay.
term as my tagline.
Copyright
Um,
right there.
yeah, I wish there was a way that I could have done that. But when I made that line where it was like that relatable AF mom, when
Mhm.
I did that, it was like a big moment because I was like, that's exactly who I
That's
am. And I remember doing it and talking to friends, and they were like, oh, that's exactly what you need to be. And it was a huge moment, and it was great. But I've thought about it more now as like, well, being such a huge, term, it's hard to put a finger as to what that is. And when I want people to come to my page and when I want them to see my content, I don't want them to come and see themselves exactly as me. And I don't want to be relatable in that they're like, oh, she looks exactly like me, or her life is exactly like mine, or anything like that. I want it to feel familiar. Like I want you to come over and be like, this feels like something feels familiar, and she feels like a neighbor. Like she feels like a good friend. Like I
yes.
want to feel like an old friend to people,
Yeah.
and I want
That's
them to
on
come and
your podcast. It's like knocking on the door. Like, "Oh, hello,
mhm.
come in." I love that because it's
Yeah, yeah. And
and
that's what I
I
want.
also love that when I look at your content, it doesn't make me feel bad about myself. Like they say, if there's someone on social media that you just get this feeling, you don't like that feeling, unfollow them. And I feel like every time I see you pop up, I'm like, you're right. It is a friend. It's someone that I can just be myself with.
yeah, because I will say pretty much the what you meet in person. Like I've always said that too. It's been amazing when I've had people come up to me that have followed me in person. It is
So
crazy when
fun.
that happens, but when it does, I can say with 100% certainty, I am exactly who I am online versus in
Yeah.
person. And I've always wanted to be that. It's exhausting to do anything other. And I was tired of it. And I also came to realize like what's so bad about showing up exactly as you are. Like, I think we've just gotten so in our heads about it. It comes with its faults. Like I have I'm not everyone's cup of tea.
Right. I'm not
And I
for
think
everyone, and that's okay. Yeah.
yeah. So I think it comes with its faults there. But you have to be really okay with knowing that. And you have to be open to the criticism because when you show the truth, people don't, we're not used to it. We're not used to truth
Right.
and honesty so much. So I think
Oh, I
that's like
love
the hard
that.
part.
Well, I love following you. So can you tell everyone where we can find you?
Yeah. So the Very Merry Life, it's Mary, Mary. So Very Merry Life. I'm on Instagram. I am on TikTok. I'm on Facebook. Technically, I don't really do much
I know
there, but
mine
I am on
exists, but
Facebook.
I don't do much with it.
Yeah, I'm on there. I'm on YouTube, but I'm like slowly exploring that. I do have a blog, theverymerrylife.com. I have my podcast,
Your
The Very Merry
podcast, you got to go
Podcast.
listen to that. It's so fun. Oh, well, thank you
Uh,
so much for chatting. I just love just how
Thank
open you
you.
get, and we could chat for hours, but I know you got
I know,
kiddos
right?
napping. So thank you so much for coming
Yeah.
on.
Oh, thank you, Katie.
I hope you enjoyed that momversation. I just find it so refreshing to talk to another mom who can just open up and share. If you enjoyed this momversation, make sure to subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss next week's. And remember that everyone burns their first pancake, so just keep flipping.